may have. Hallelujah, forevermore. He came down that we came down. He came down that we came down. He came down that we came down. Hallelujah. He came down that we may have joy. He came down that we may have joy. He came down that we may have joy. Hallelujah, forevermore. He came down that we may have joy. He came down that we may have joy. He came down that we may have joy. Hallelujah, forevermore.
And I am recording this. I hope you don't mind. My idea was to post it for anyone whose work schedule made it difficult for them to get on today. Well, welcome to week 1 of Advent. And I hope you enjoyed one of my favorite Advent songs, He Came Down. It was written by John Bell of the Wyona community in Scotland. And today I have an Advent story for you from Africa. It's adapted from a book called The Man Who Couldn't Find God, and a book that's called What Language Does God Speak? African Stories About Christmas and Easter. And the story goes like this. All the people lived on the plains, and they were like people everywhere, some good, some bad. A man named John Sheo lived in the valley. He was a faithful Christian and participated in his small Christian community, helping the poor and the needy, especially the lepers that lived on the slope. But in the valley itself, there was discord. Thieves and tricksters walked about openly. There was fighting, witchcraft, and lying. Finally, John decided to move, saying to himself, God isn't here. God is the unsurpassed great spirit who doesn't like fighting and discord. He wants peace and harmonious relationships in his human family. John saw a mountain in the distance and thought, God, our great ancestor must live up there in the quiet and the peace. I will go and find God. It took a long time, days and days, until he reached the mountain. And then he undertook the arduous climb in the hot, boring equatorial sun. Late one day, he rested in the side of a footpath. He was startled to see a bearded stranger with a staff making his way down the mountain. Jambo, they greeted each other in their Swahili tongue. What is the news? John told him he was on his way up the mountain to see God, the creator and source. The traveler said he was on his way down the mountain to live with all the people below. They talked as was the custom and parted with the greeting, goodbye until we meet again. As he continued to climb, John thought of the man and admired him. He spoke well. John wondered why he was going down into the valley. As John climbed, the air thinned and John moved more slowly. It was quiet and still, with the only noise coming from the birds. John thought, now I will find God. He looked around, but there was no one there. And then John cried out, is God home? God, where are you? Suddenly, a gaunt old man appeared and greeted John. Welcome, Jambo. Rest after your journey and climb. John told him of the journey and how he sought the all-peaceful one. The old man listened, and then he answered, I'm sorry, but God doesn't live here. I live alone. But surely, the old man said, you met God on the path. He was walking down to live with the people there. John was astonished. Are you sure? I thought he'd be up here. Why would he want to live down there among the fighting, the jealousies, and the anger of people? The old man answered, God knows the weaknesses of his people. The old one went on to say, there is an African fable about an African hunter who was angry with God. He shot an arrow into the clouds. So God withdrew into the high heavens to get away from the angry human beings. But God, the great elder, loved his human family and wanted them to have tender care. So God, our great ancestor, sent his son to pitch his tent among us, to live with us, to share our joys and sorrows, successes and failures, in order to save us. And this is called Christmas. John was moved and listened as the wise old man spoke. This Jesus Emmanuel is a mystery who prefers the company of the poor, the lonely, the simple, the lowly, and the needy. John knew he had learned the wisdom of the mountaintop, but now it was time to go down to the valley where God was. He told the old one, I need to live with the people as God lives. The old one reached out and touched John's head in blessing. John turned slowly, and the valley stretched out before him. He began his climb down. Now he knew where to find God. This Advent story about God with us brings us several questions that we can talk about for a couple of minutes, but then I want to just have them accompany you. One of the questions is, can you begin each day of Advent by saying Jambo or hello to God in Swahili? Just the action of saying hello to God in a different language can alert your mind and body to the fact that you're in a different season. You're in Advent. So I challenge you all to write down the word Jambo. It's spelled just like it sounds, Jambo, Jambo. Hello. It is a type of hello that is very, very intimate and only said to those that you love a great deal or that you wish to be in love with. So make Jambo part of your Advent morning. Questions to walk with that you may want to jot down. What are you waiting for this Advent? The word Advent means waiting. What are you waiting for? A third or second question is, where is God calling you to be in the valley of humanity? Where is God calling you to be in the valley of humanity? And lastly, the old man said, God knows the weaknesses of his people. God knows the weaknesses of his people. Do you find those words comforting or disarming? God knows the weaknesses of his people. If anyone wants to take themselves off of mute or anything else and make a comment on one of those, we have about 4 or 5 minutes left. Any Advent thoughts this morning?
Well, I find it very comforting to hear that God knows the weaknesses of his people. That means he goes to, he awakens those who need him most.
Amen. And remember, God is in your weaknesses as much as your strengths. Your weaknesses are just a different tool for God to use. Other thoughts anyone wants to share? Lori?
I think, it just shows, like what Christine said, God knows weaknesses. It's comforting. It shows his grace.
Grace. And what could be more grace-filled than God becoming a tiny child?
One
Anyone
thing-
else?
Oh,
Go
one
ahead.
thing I thought about when you were reading the devotion, I thought you were going to say that he discovered God was inside of him all along. You know, that the discovery is we all carry God inside of us.
Yes. And we're all called to share the God inside of us, which means we only get so much time on the mountaintop. Only so much time alone because we're called to be in ministry. Other thoughts? Well, I'm going, in case anybody needs to know this information, or if you want to invite someone else, the links for this are on our website. They are on our Facebook page. They are in the newsletter, and I will send them out again so that it refreshes and you will find it again. I am recording them, and I am going to ask Ron if he can put them on the website. So if you think anyone else needs to hear the story called Jumbo, feel free to direct them to our website once Ron gets a chance to put it on there. All right. And I bid you all a beginning of a wondrous Advent journey. May its simplicity be its wonder. Go with God into your day. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen.
Yep,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you all for joining me.